What's up, guys? So I'm back with these Doyle multi-position vices. So in the first build series, I did the radial bearing, or thrust bearing modification. Second video, I did the ball detented handle with the 1 3/8 ball. Jax is kind of a quick adjust, and just absolutely love that upgrade. So for this third modification, I'm going to be doing copper jaws. My Wilton vise next to me here. Great setup. But I really wanted 2 vices, and something that was going to integrate nicely on the fixture table system. So that's why I went with these. But that vise has the copper jaws, and I did that like 10 years ago. And they actually are fine. They get kind of mangled up, and you just file them flat, and it's not really that big a deal. So I would say out of all the modifications, that is the #1 upgrade. So that vise, someone's going to come pick it up today in a couple hours. So I will be without a bench vise with copper jaws. And you don't realize how much you use that until it's gone, because when I was assembling these, they got stuck, the balls, and I had to pull that vise over and hold on to it so I could actually pull this apart. So you get this like a ball shape inside the counter board for the socketed cap screws, and it grabs really nicely. So there was really no other way I could hold on to these without completely destroying them, and the copper jaws allowed me to do that. So I'm going to build these 2 sets of copper jaws in this video. All right, guys, I'm here at the cold saw. So I got this the 150 tooth blade. This is actually ground for soft materials like brass, copper, and aluminum. And I got my soft jaw material 1/2x1. And I got my stop sets. So this is my Kentucky gauge, and this is a stop I had built and had all these parts heat treated, or at least case hardened. So this is the back fence, and it's got a jack screw there. So I come in and it hits. So that's 6 inches. And since this vise only has this saw only has 1 vise, I run a stop that is removable. So that's a Fireball 1-inch shim. So if I didn't have that there, sometimes this part will bind up against the blade, and I just like having that clearance. So when you make that cut, the part actually has a spot to go instead of being stuck there kind of like on a fence on a table saw. So I'm going to move this to, we want them 5 1/8. I'm going to take it just like a 32nd over. So 5/32, and we should be good. Another thing I do on this particular saw is that I cover these serrated jaws with like a thin layer of this Gorilla duct tape. So it's thick enough that it prevents those jaws from digging into these soft materials like brass and definitely copper. So it doesn't last too long, but just put it on there because this back jaw and the front jaw has these like kind of knurled serrations in it. And, you know, with the copper, it's so soft, it's just going to dig right in there. So I do that. I have a new saw that I'm currently rebuilding, and it doesn't have those. They're just hard faces. So I won't have to do this. Okay, here we go. So bring the work in, and we're set at 5 5/32. I have just enough material here. And this blade cuts very nicely on the soft metals. If I had a different blade on here, it would actually have more resistance, but this high positive tooth grind on it works really well. So I just thought I'd show you guys this too. So this saw has the 1 vise. Like I said, my new saw has the option to run 2 vices, which I have both the vices for it. This is a setup I had made, and it's just an auxiliary clamp because I'm barely holding on the back there. I got a couple inches. This helps square it up. So sometimes when it matters, I'll run that. So. Okay, I'm here at the belt grinder. So my plan is just to put a chamfer around the corners of these copper bars where I cut it on the cold saw. So clean this up and get it ready to put in the mill. So here's the print here. If you guys can see that. I'm just putting in the holes for the socket cap screws. I'm going to run these low profile 5/16 18s. I was going to machine these down and put a smaller counterbore in there, but I figured, you know what, I'm just going to leave these as they are. So if I did that, there'd hardly be anything to grab. So this is about as easy as it gets on the ProtoTrack. So I've already deleted the program in there. So all I do is go position drill. I'm on the center here, and I want to go X positive 1.734. My absolute position. Y does not change to 1. And then position drill, we're going to go same direction, but negative 1.734, negative, and that's an absolute position, and that is it. My plan is to put a 1/4 inch hole in there first and then follow up with the counterbore. So I'm using these drill point counterbores. I like these, and they seem to work pretty well. They're nice and stubby too, like with the stub drills. Only issue is that I don't want to go in with that in the copper. It seems to want to walk around, so I'll put a pilot hole in first. I got that counterbore tool installed, so bring this up, and we're just gonna, what I like doing, I want to go a 1/4 inch deep on these. So I'm just gonna, let's see if this will hold here. Let that dry. I'm gonna bring it in and just to the bottom of that counterbore, and then I'll set my 0 here on the digital readout for the quill. Try to slow that down a little bit. Yeah, that copper doesn't really like. I can go up a little higher. So, all right there. Set. I'm gonna blast switch this tool in. Okay. And that's it. Okay, so let's just do a test fit on this so I don't mess up here. Let's open up more. Okay. That looks good. And then I got enough wiggle room in there. Move these side to side to get them to, line up if there's any play in this dynamic jaw. And I over countersunk those. I went pretty deep, so the idea is you have something in there, you can grab like a ball shape or something like that, and it doesn't, it's far enough from the steel. It's not going to damage maybe a soft part. So I'm just going to flip them over because the idea was that these are going to be reversible if I don't have to either think about it when I take them on and off, and then also the one side gets damaged. Okay, so let's just see. Yeah, that's going to line up. And then since we're here, we'll just check this side too. Yeah, the copper and the red seem to clash, so I think a hammered blue or a hammered gray will look good on these. And they're going to get beat up, and that's okay. Yeah, I think we're good there. No problems with that. So I got the copper jaws done to mount to the Doyle vises. Next thing I want to do, as I mentioned, I want to add pins along the top. But I'd rather not put steel on copper. So you get coolant in there and they seem to corrode together. It's just not a good combination. So what I've come up with is I'm going to add a helicoil as a STI, call it a screw thread insert. So I'm going to tap these for a helicoil thread, the helicoil tap, and then install these with Loctite. And that Loctite should have some additional effect for the corrosion resistance. So moisture does get in there. At least I think the stainless and the copper with the Loctite should do a little bit better. And then also steel screws on copper, they seem to want to just be too tight. They don't open and close very smoothly. Probably would be fine, but I figured let's try this. My only concern is tapping through 1 inch of copper. So what I might do is I might drill all these out, tap halfway, flip it, tap the other halfway, because these only go in halfway. So we'll see how that goes. Change of plans here. I'm actually just going to run a 1024 on these. And my original concern was maybe the steel and the copper would corrode together, but these are going to come in and out all the time. So, and I can grease them. So I think actually that's going to be fine. I can also run a brass in here, which would be totally fine. And the reason I'm doing the coarse thread is because these do get kind of chewed up. So it'd be easier to clean up and run a screw into a coarse thread than it will a fine thread. And I believe you can get more options in the coarse thread than you can the fine. But that's from just a quick McMaster search. I think the more variety in the coarse thread on the 1024 for some reason. So. So the plan here is to actually flip this part, and I drilled halfway, and the copper is so gummy that sometimes that drill wants to move. So I'm going to do the other half. I'm just going to go through 1/2 inch on both sides, and I want to reference this side. It's easier to square up, you know, to even up the y-axis than it is the x-axis. All right, well, let's do some chamfering off the machine, and then I'm going to put the parts back in. But I want to show you this. This is that Bauer drill press from Harbor Freight. So I have these telescoping tubes, just like the stand I'm working on, and then this is just a support for the table because this is pretty heavy, and there's springs in those tubes. So this thing really moves very nicely because I have to take it up and down a few times a day to do the there's an infeed for the roll-in saw, and you know, it's really. It gets old, but this is not so bad. So there, that looks good right there. We'll just line that up. So what I do is I lock the table, and then this is that adjustment. This is just gives a little more rigidity there, and then these legs are spring loaded. Lock that down, and this thing is real stable now. This drill press actually has a good depth stop here, so I use it a lot, but I don't want to overdo it here. Okay, let's try that. Let's do this here. Let's call it good there. Right, so I'm ready to tap with this 1024. Decided to get a new tap, and I'm going to run anchor lube on this. My thought was I'm going to go in a 1/2 inch once. So all the countersinks are the same anyway, so I'll set my readout. You guys can't see that. And now I'm going to tap this a 1/2 inch deep, and then we're going to flip it and do the same thing since I'm only going to use 3/8 hardware anyways. So I'm going to slow it down. So we'll just float this in. So you can see that readout. So it's right there. And I come in and just kind of float it in. And that's plenty good. All right, guys, so that concludes the copper job build. I installed these on the Doyle multi-position vises. I guess you call them the pivot vises, multi-position, a lot of different names. So this is a piece of like a 4-inch disc. You see I have the 1024 socketed cap screws installed. These can be moved around, but I haven't put in one increment from the end. And that's just perfect. So they hold in there. And it's really nice with this is, let's say I needed to work on the edge of this part. That's a very good method to access that. Yes, this has the plate jaws kind of set up on the backside as well. But if this part was like a triangular shape or had some unsymmetrical edge, this would be the way to do it. And it doesn't really take up any more real estate. It's just putting the tapped holes on into the copper jaws. And so I figured, why not? Let's try it, see how it works. If they get beat up, they are the coarse thread, so I still think I can actually get in there and put the hardware in. So I'll bring it a little closer and show you how these function. Okay, so here they are, both sides, and just like a normal jaw, it's just the copper has so much hold to it. It just really works well, and they get beat up, and that's part of the deal. They are somewhat sacrificial. So what I did is I tap the bottom as well. So if these do get all kind of beat up, I can take them off and just kind of hit them on the bell sander and flip them over and get a new set, since the hole pattern's everything lined up. And then this is with the socketed cap screws in there, and that holds very nicely. So I'm happy with that, and I'll show you the setup I just did. So, but if I wanted to maybe pivot this over and run it at 60 degrees for whatever reason, if you're polishing or doing some work on a part like this, more realistically, maybe you'd be on the edge here. Instead of holding it like here, this is the limit on these jaws is 4 inches, and that's how big this part is. So, but it's crazy with the copper. It's like you do that, it's pretty firm in there. But now you can hold a much larger disc. I don't know how large it will hold. I would have to pull these out and measure it, but just to show you guys. So, that's really in there. So I could come in here and work on that part in this position. Pull this back. And that's it. All right, guys, that concludes the copper pin jaw build on these Doyle multi-position vices, and I'm happy to have them back in the shop. So with the copper jaws, because I definitely use a vise every day, and I've grown accustomed to having the copper jaws on them. And once you do it, you really probably will never run anything other than copper jaws. So thanks for watching. This concludes, I guess this would be episode 3. Stay tuned. Episode 4, I'm going to be doing the V jaws, and then probably episode 5 will be these V plate jaws, and that'll probably be the end of this series. I might go in and rework the detent, but doesn't really bother me that much right now, and I'd also like to paint them, but we'll see how far I get. I think the copper and the red clash. So I think it just looked better if these were that hammer tone blue. So thanks again for watching.